cord goes all the way over here somewhere.
Now I can hear it.
I don't hear a thing. You hear it.
I hear it.
I don't hear a thing. If I can't hear anything, I gotta take off the headphones. Testing 1, 2, 3. Hi everybody, this is Alan with the Cartridge Family. Oh, that'll be the day when you take our guns. That'll be
Okay, well we're back and we're live, and this is not Elvis Presley sitting next to me. Anyway, this is Alan.
Aren't working, but I can hear
Alan
myself.
Korwin, even though his name says Diane Douglas.
Oh, come on, change my name.
You grew a beard, Diane.
I am not Diane Douglas, please.
At any rate, Alan Korwin is a journalist, a gun enthusiast, a Second Amendment individual, and just a heck of a nice guy, and smart as can be, especially. I know you paid me to say that.
Fooled another one.
Yeah, I fooled everybody. At any rate, we are really interested in our gun scenario here in the United States, and it just seems like every day there's some nut job that's, and it happened again today, I guess. Yeah. There was some shootings and so forth.
You mean murders?
Well, I guess it was a murder. I think someone did die in that school shooting. But at any rate, Alan, I've asked Alan to be on here because there's a lot of things going on. We see the president making stupid statements, and I mean stupid statements about Second Amendment, and all the amendments saying, well, there's nothing set in stone in our Constitution. I disagree with that. And Alan, you have been for years and years and years, you've been a friend of mine, an author. I'm going to pull these over here real quick. These are some of the publications that Alan has, and I'm going to let you plug your own books, but at any rate, he is an author.
So the Arizona Gun Owner's Guide.
Yep.
After You Shoot, and Your First Gun.
That's 3 out of 14.
Wow.
He's a prolific writer, and you should get these books. They're very, very
you have
good.
them here, Ron, don't you, at your place?
Well, I don't sell them here. Alan sells them, but I don't. These are mine. These are copies that I've gotten.
Well, you're putting it far away.
Well, that's because you keep them out of the hands of minors.
Books you can sell to anybody.
Right.
But actually, anybody can have a gun. There's no minimum age. You should act responsibly. I got that question during an interview earlier. Anybody can have a gun. It's like a Bible. And Bibles are very dangerous. The communists don't let you have a Bible.
Right.
That's how dangerous they are. But you should have training. But I'm against mandatory training. If you have a firearm and save your life, should you go to jail because you didn't take the class?
No.
Well, I agree with that.
No, but you know what? That is what happens oftentimes, right? You're you're defending yourself. The first thing that happens, law enforcement will arrest you. They will book you and they'll take you in. And for some reason, the innocent until proven guilty doesn't necessarily coincide with using a firearm.
Well, the political left, the people pushing critical race theory, their attitude is you're guilty until proven guilty.
Well said,
that's what they're doing. And
very well said.
The person with the gun is guilty. The person who shot is innocent, even if they're the criminal. I saw somebody sent me a video, and I brought this up today. There's a guy walking past a car, and the windows are tinted. So think about this. And he walks by, he looks at the car, he's carrying a sidearm. He's holding a sidearm. I don't know where it was. And he tries to get into the car. He yanks on the handle, pulls really hard, starts trying to pry the door open, and somebody in the car shoots him through the window. And he reels back, takes his gun, and fires into the car. The person in the car fires back through the window and then fires 2 more times until the guy's on the floor inert. Were the shots from inside the car justified? It's just a car parked there with tinted windows. You can't see if anybody's in it. Mm-hmm. And the guy walking by with a gun is literally trying to jack the car.
Right. Trying
to pry it open and fires into the car with no provocation that I could see.
Well, that's an interesting story. I don't know that
you have a right to defend yourself. If somebody takes a shot at you, that's pretty well cut and dry.
I would think so. And the problem, I get this question all the time. What kind of gun should I get? What's the best gun?
And I asked you that question years ago.
That's right. So what's the answer to what's the best gun?
Well, your answer was, first of all, what are you going to use it for? Is it defense, or are you going to target
That's a
practice,
piece
or
of it.
what?
Why do you need 10 guns? And I'll answer that in a second.
Yeah.
So what kind of gun should you have?
Well, one that is used to protect yourself in whatever event that.
Well, if you're a hunter, that's a different story than a gun
well,
for
that's still
protection.
protecting. No, I'll tell you something. You have an elk running towards you. You're protecting yourself, right?
Yeah, elks don't usually run towards you. And
Well,
you
if
eat
you have
well
a carrot,
they
if
are.
you have a carrot, they may be, and it's.
Or if you're on property where there's a fruit tree.
Yeah.
But no, the answer, it's a little bit snide, but the answer is the best gun is the one you have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's what you told
And
me.
hopefully you've bought it because you went to a professional and you've tried out some and it feels good in your hand. It's serving a purpose.
Right.
don't just-
How do you select a gun? But and it's more complex than we can do in the hour or whatever time we have. But professionals in self-defense will say, kind of with tongue in cheek, but it's true, the best gun is the one you have. And here's a fellow in a car, or a woman, somebody in the car, and somebody unprovoked fires into the car. Well, whatever gun you have, and I've spoken to people who've defended themselves, I wanted to have my Colt 45 with the with the magazine and the modifications, and all I had was my crummy little 22 target pistol that's missing a screw. The best gun is the one you have.
Save your life, yeah.
And to save your life, the best gunfight is the one you avoid.
That's right.
It's always better to avoid a gunfight.
When a shot is
than
not
to-
fired, that's the
Yes.
best gunfight.
The
Yeah.
best gunfight, it's always better to avoid a gunfight than to win one. But here's a fellow who, whatever gun he had, he fired, and the guy he hit fired back. So it wasn't a well-placed shot. It's not about caliber. It's about shot placement.
Right.
And so he hits the guy, and the guy shoots at him. And I can't tell if he was wounded. It's a 30-second video. The whole incident happened in a few seconds.
And that's how it happens.
It's usually a few
Wow,
seconds.
what a story.
I know, and I have the video. I'll send it to you if you want.
This is, I'd like
It's
to see
very
it.
instructive.
We can put it on our website, as a matter of fact.
All these videos that you see about shootings, police shootings, private shootings, are very instructive. And at first blush, it's like, guy's doing nothing. He's sitting in a car. The windows are tinted, and somebody walks by, tries to get in the car, and then shoots into the vehicle. But the fellow inside, for whatever reason, had a gun on the seat or in the console or something, and when fired at, returns fire, not sufficiently to stop the perpetrator, and that doesn't stop him. The guy shoots at him. Maybe he was wounded. Don't know. But was able to retrieve a firearm, return fire. Guy wheels back and then fires, and 2 shots more, and then the guy sprawled on the floor, inert, maybe dead, maybe not. There's a joke about that. Empty the magazine,
Yeah, no.
right? You don't know. Stop the threat. Well, the threat's apparently stopped. Now, when I brought that up today, this was at a course that a rabbi asked me to do, and there were about 40 people there, and they brought up the very interesting point that, well, did they know each other? Did they already have an argument? Was the guy in the car pointing a gun? But the guy outside was trying to break in. That was pretty obvious. Well, maybe it was his car. I don't know. How come he had a gun ready? Well, I know a lot of people who travel with a gun ready just in case. What kind of neighborhood? I don't know. But he fired unprovoked, seemed unprovoked. Maybe the guy in the car was like this, and the guy outside fired. If you're involved in an incident like this, you don't know if you're not guilty until years later in a court.
That's right.
And all the evidence comes out. Turns out one guy owed the other guy money. One guy knew the other guy's wife, in the biblical sense. He knew her. You don't know. It's always better to avoid a gunfight. And so when Biden says none of this affects the Second Amendment, a flat-out lie, like a flat-out lie, some of his handlers should have said, hey, Joe, don't say that.
Yeah.
Do you remember the story, and I'm sure you do, back several years ago, I think Biden was vice president then, and he was talking about what you ought to do with the shotgun. Can you relate that story to us, Al?
And I've written about this. My website, gunlaws.com, covers these kinds of situations, and some of the things that Biden has said, in fact, he said one when he was campaigning. He said, if somebody's trying to break in, take a shotgun and fire 2 blasts through the door. That was one of his things. Fire 2 blasts.
And you find it's one of your
through the
children
door.
that just is.
Now, one of the basic rules of firearm safety is know your target before your finger goes on the trigger.
And know what's behind the target.
And know what's beyond, right. Know your target and what's beyond. So he's recommending shooting through a door, which is horrific. And there's stories about shooting your relatives, your friends, just, it's the wrong thing to do.
Even one of your kids said, "Mommy, I got an upset tummy."
I heard a noise in the closet, and it was the kids who were playing. You have to know your target, and Biden says fire a blast through the door. Biden also said go out to your back porch, assuming you live in a place with a back porch. I didn't.
In the middle of the woods.
For most of my
Yeah.
life, I didn't live with a back porch. I now have a backyard. And fire 2 blasts into the air with your double-barreled shotgun. So in other words, you're now defenseless. You have no ammo in the gun.
Yeah.
This is what the guy in the White House said, who might be president.
And then he
That's a whole
forgets
nother
physics,
argument.
that what goes up must come down.
We have a specific law about that, Shannon's law. It's illegal to fire a gun, celebratory gunfire. They tried to pass a law that said you can't fire a gun up into the air. Well, all guns are fired into the air.
Right.
Think about it. It's
Yeah,
the only way a
yeah,
gun fires. So vertical, well, you know what it takes to actually fire a gun vertically? You got to measure it and lock it into it, whatever. So he suggests firing your double barrel off the back porch to scare the guy away.
Of course, because they'd run, right?
And they'll hear you cocking the gun. You don't cock a double barrel, but he knows so little about it, it's insane. And when the rabbi had me on Zoom, I showed a picture before my connection went out. My connection went in and out. On the left, there's a picture of a LAPD police training target, and it's a black and white silhouette of a person with a 5-ring, a 5-ring, a 6, 7, 8, 9, and a 10 ring
On the heart.
on a silhouette of a person. And on the right is a picture of a leg, just a leg with like a target drawn and a 10 on the knee. And Biden had said, why didn't you just shoot him in the leg? Do you remember that? Said, why
I
do you
don't
have to
remember
sh-"
that one, but that's a lot smaller target than the torso.
It's impossible. In fact, in the Korwin School of Study, the most difficult shot to take in the world is to hit a moving limb in the precious few seconds when that would actually be legal, when your life is threatened. When you're about to die because a criminal's trying to murder you, try and shoot a moving limb. It's virtually impossible.
Yeah.
No police are trained to do that.
No.
You can't do it. You're not supposed to. There is no target showing a limb, and you're supposed to try and hit it. It's, how good a group can you shoot? Can you shoot a 3-shot group that's all inside a limb?
A kneecap.
It's a joke. And in fact, there's no legal authority to shoot a limb. The law says you can use deadly force to save your life in an emergency. Trying to wound somebody is not the use of lethal force.
No.
That's trying to wound somebody. You can't do that. You go to jail. It's a felony. So Biden suggested to the country, commit a felony. Nobody in the media did anything to correct him.
Yeah.
They just aired it over and over and over. And the media is complicit in promotion of a felony from this guy, Joe Biden, who knows less about guns than a 7-year-old who watches cowboy movies.
Well, he says, who needs 100 rounds in their clip?
Right. There's no such thing.
No, it doesn't exist.
And who needs that to go hunting? And he doesn't realize that in the founding days, in the revolutionary days, it wasn't, the ducks are coming, the ducks are coming. That's not what Paul Revere did, and that wasn't the problem. In fact,
No, but he wanted to. He wanted to say that. They just wouldn't let him.
Well, one of the issues, and you've told me this many times about about shooting. And at first, I always thought if I have a pistol, I'm not going to rack it. Racking means to load it so that there's a bullet in the chamber, ladies and gentlemen. And Alan, we did this little experiment, obviously with nothing in the gun. We cleared it. And Alan, I think you stood about 15, maybe 20 feet away from me, and I had the
You're
sidearm.
talking about a tooler drill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And he says, okay, now he's going to come at me, and with the intent of doing bodily harm and killing me. And he says, I want you, once I make that move, you are to draw your pistol, rack
the
it,
slide,
and get
and
ready
come on point.
and fire. And he was on me before he even got the gun racked. He would have been. I would have been dead.
Let me comment on that. But one point about 100 rounds in a magazine and Joe Biden's abject stupidity about firearms. That is our commander-in-chief right now. The purpose of the Second Amendment is balance of power. You almost never hear this. The reason the founders put it in there is so that the public presented a balance of power to the government, so they couldn't take over, to keep tyranny at bay, to preserve freedom. If all the power is in the hands of the government, then we have no power. Power comes out of the barrel of a gun, as Mao Zedong said. Of course, Reagan pointed out that power comes out of the barrel of a pen. And I'm a writer. I've written 14 books. I'm working on my 15th. You can see them at gunlaws.com, as I pointed out. But by having an armed public,
You can say that again if you'd like.
I will mention gunlaws.com again later.
Okay. Nice job.
Give me one of those books, I'll hold them up. Give me the light blue one. That's the most important.
It's
in this
easy.
kind
Is
of
that the
business.
one that matches your eyes?
Thank you for that, Ray. We're the linchpin of freedom on the planet. People are trying to get here. Nobody's trying to get into communist China.
No.
Nobody's trying to get into
No.
Cuba. They're trying to get out of Cuba. In China, if you're found with a gun, you're executed. Here, if you're found with a gun, it's like, oh, that's a nice gun. Can I try that?
Yeah, that's right.
But the fact that we're armed keeps the government at bay. And that's falling apart because now everybody in the government can have machine guns and we can't. Although a lot of people who don't understand it think the criminals are running around with machine guns because the media portrays it, the news portrays it, the movies portray it, but machine guns are essentially out of reach for the public. But the fact that we're armed keeps the forces of government at bay. Now, so that's the purpose of the Second Amendment. People don't get it. We are the militia, the unorganized militia. We're armed to the teeth, and the police can't just kick you around, come in your home anytime they want, although increasingly they can and do, but there's a gun behind every blade of grass, as the Japanese understood in World War II. So you're mentioning something called a tooler drill, which was designed by a lieutenant in the police in Utah a couple of decades ago. A man with a knife can do you harm from 21 feet, that's how he developed it, before you can draw your gun and fire. And you can try this exercise. Get a rubber knife and a guy with a holstered gun, make sure the gun is empty. Make sure the gun is empty. Let me repeat this. Make sure the gun is empty.
So should the gun be loaded?
Yeah, it should be empty.
Not in the drill.
And from a holster, a retention holster, preferably one that holds the gun in.
Snap, a snap on it or
Even a
something.
cowboy holster, you make sure you have an empty gun here, and standing there, 21 feet away from there, you're just standing there. Now, you know this is going to happen. I start to run at you with a rubber knife, and before you can get the gun out, if it's a cowboy gun, you got to cock it, get the gun out, come to bear, bring the gun out, I stab you.
Yeah.
From 21 feet.
And he did that. Well, he didn't stab me, but I mean, we
No, I
actually
stabbed
did
him a
that.
few times. It was a rubber knife, and it was like...
Yeah, and I've never
comedy
forgiven
show.
you about that, Alan.
He had some rubber knife wounds. Show it to him.
There's
Yeah,
a
right
big
here.
scar. It's called a tooler drill, T-E-U-L-L-E-R. You can look it up. You'll see it online. And there's some kung fu type guys who do it and come on and kick you all around just for extra effect. Now, 21 feet is not a legal thing. People will say, can I shoot him if he's within 21 feet? You can only use deadly force if your life is immediately in
Imminent
danger.
threat, right?
Yeah, imminent threat. He's got to have opportunity. He's got to have the means. And you have to believe your life is in danger. And there's actually two standards there. In Arizona, you have to believe your life is in danger. In Texas, a third person has to believe you thought your life was in danger. So it's whether the jury believes that you thought you were going to die, or they would have believed that you thought your life was in danger. It's the third man or the person in the situation. They're subtly different, but the jury instruction will be different. You didn't know that when you shot this dirtbag. Always better to avoid a gunfight than to win one. Always better to avoid a gunfight.
Under that
if
conditions in
possible.
Texas, it's easy to be bought off. You just say, I'm the third man. I'll take the highest bid.
Now, Alan, tell us a little bit about situational awareness.
A very important part of self-defense training. And if you have a gun, or you're thinking of getting one, or even if you don't have one, you're supposed to be aware of your surroundings so you can duck and get out of the way. And everybody I know and have spoken to who's ever been in any kind of confrontation for the rest of their lives goes around thinking, why didn't I see it coming? Why was I there? Why did I stop off for milk at the Circle K at 11 o'clock at night in that neighborhood, and they end up in some kind of situation they shouldn't have been in? Situational awareness means you're aware of your surroundings, and most people go around in what's called condition white. They don't know, they don't care. They're
I'm
gonna
on
go
my
by
phone, I'm playing,
Oh,
I'm
there.
texting back and forth.
no clue. And guys start coming in on you, and you didn't know they were there until after. I think it was Jeff Cooper. Was it Jeff Cooper who developed the 4 color conditions? White, yellow, orange, and red. You walk around normally in white. You don't know what's going on. Like right now, we're not totally aware. In yellow, you're aware. You know what's going on. It's hard to stay in condition yellow. In orange, you know something's up. The hair is tingling on the back of your neck. You realize something's up. And in red, it's fight or flight. You know something's on. Your life's in danger. You're about to be robbed. Something's happening. With the guy in the car that I mentioned before, he's probably sitting there in white. The guy walking by is in yellow because he's about to do something. All of a sudden, they're both in orange, and then they're both in red. 4 conditions, situational awareness. Don't go to Circle K at 11 o'clock for milk. Live without it. Drink black coffee. Have your cereal with water. Have something else.
That's right.
Good-
Now,
good-
there's
good advice.
companies out there like USCCA. I'm sure
Right.
you're familiar with this.
We're friends.
And they're a great organization. I've been with them for many
They
years.
really are.
So basically, what they do is it's an insurance type policy.
They don't like using
Um,
that word, but
yeah.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So basically, it's in the event. I mean, they teach you, they train you, they give you everything that you could need in the way of videos. And you know, when you said about the tool.
The Tooler drill.
The Tooler drill. They do scenarios which are just phenomenal that you can watch online. So they give you all of these things. They also give you a card that you are a member there. Now, in the event that you ever have to, and I think the creator of USCCA has been carrying for 30 years. He's never drawn his weapon,
Right.
and
Most
he's
people have not.
very, very proud of that, because you don't want to do that. You don't want to go for it. You don't want to take it. You definitely want to pull it out unless it's that imminent threat. But in case something happens where law enforcement is called in, you hand them a card, you let them know I'll fully cooperate. You know that you're going to be arrested, but they have actual attorneys that specialize in Second Amendment situations like this, that it can be a big help if that ever comes about.
Now, I don't want to make this an ad for USCCA, but I've written for them. I wrote a column for their magazine. Let me have that red book, if I may.
I get the magazine.
Yeah, well, I'm in it.
Okay.
Well, I was for about 4 years. I wrote a column called After the Shoot,
Yeah.
based on
Oh, they
this
have
book.
a video too about that.
And
Yeah.
they have a lot of things. Tim Schmidt, the founder, I wrote a column for their magazine called After the Shoot, and I ran around collecting stories about people who were involved in a shooting one way or another. It was fascinating stuff. I did a column on false draws, where you thought something was going to happen and you reached, but nothing was happening. Well, what happened? Why did you reach? Did you pull? I did a story on people who had to shoot somebody. And the trainers will tell you what to do with your gun after a shooting. What, if you had to shoot somebody, what would you do with your gun?
Throw it in the trash and point to Ray.
Right, near a convenience store across from a school. Who did that?
Or have your wife do it for you.
The trainers will tell you reholster or put the gun somewhere where nobody will, back in your drawer or something like that. Nobody did that. One guy put the gun on the hood of his Jeep. One woman put the rifle on her front lawn and waited for the police. Everybody had a different thing they did with the gun. The most interesting was a pizza delivery man who delivered a pizza, was held up at gunpoint, managed to shoot the perpetrator, took the perpetrator's gun and his, drove home and called the police. So why did you see, they're looking, you can't see, there's an audience here. They're looking at me like, what? He took the perpetrator's gun? He said, well, it was a bad neighborhood. If I left the gun, it would be stolen. So I figured I'll take it and bring it home and then I'll give it to the police later. So everybody had a different story from what really happened to what instructors think this is what you ought to do. Well, what really happens? I had one where a woman was attacked. This was in Texas, where everybody has a gun except for a few crackpots. The woman was carjacked. The guy shoves her in her car, and she has her gun in the console, and she's able to get it out, stick it over here, and tell the guy, you better stop. He gets out of the car. She holds him at gunpoint, and 4 other people show up and hold him at gunpoint with her.
Oh, wow.
And when the police come, they yell, put the gun down. And she says, he's still moving. And they yell, put the gun down. And she yells, he's still moving. And finally, another squad car comes all the way down there with a rifle. And then they all lay their guns down. The police arrest everybody. And eventually, they settle everything, but it took months.
Yeah.
Took months.
So what is the proper procedure? Can you instruct everybody who's listening right now that if they're ever in that situation where they're in imminent danger, they have to pull their weapon, whether or not they shoot or not. What is the correct procedure to move forward?
There is no correct procedure. The correct procedure is it's always better to avoid a gunfight than to win one. Why was that woman near her car when some guy would attack her? It's situational awareness. And afterwards, she's probably still thinking, why was I there? Why didn't I spot that guy? Couldn't I have moved away? Something.
Right.
So her correct procedure was to stick her gun under the guy's chin and say, get off me, and suffer through weeks and months of legal hassle, trying to get her gun back, being charged as a criminal who threatened some guy's life even though she wasn't the criminal, and 4 other guys who were good Samaritans in Texas who went through the same thing for helping out a woman and eventually get off. She did the right thing. She's alive, and the bad guys, I think she said the bad guy walked.
Wow.
No way.
Yeah, and in fact, we had a story like that. I work with a group, a religious group, Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. And if ever there was a group that understands this because of the Holocaust, it was started by the son of a Holocaust survivor, jpfo.org. If you want to get involved with the group, they say you don't have to be Jewish, you just have to love freedom to join this group, jpfo.org. We had a story about a woman, let me see if I can get this right. Oh, in the heat of the moment, I can't quite bring it together correctly. But she also defended herself, ended up with lots of sorrows and problems, but in the end, she was glad she acted and made it out alive. But in the end, she wished it didn't happen. But because she had a gun, she survived.
So
the answer is survive first, but try not to be in that situation.
So from a law enforcement perspective, right? They get a call, shots fired at this address. You have been able to save your life. The perpetrator is down. He is there. do you reholster? Do you set the gun down? Do you stay there? Do you try to go for safe cover? What's the correct procedure? Because you don't know. Obviously, you call 911. You know, there's somebody down. You try to get. I would make sure that the whatever firearm he was using, that it was away from him, that he didn't have a chance to reuse it. I mean, I've seen enough movies to know that, you know, you shoot somebody 5 times, they still come back with you with the gun. So that's real life.
I'm going to change the subject after we deal with this. Everything you've seen on TV about guns is probably 100% wrong, and that includes the news. And I say this a lot, and people think that can't be right. But let's watch a newscast, and I'll point out the inaccuracies. And you mentioned there was some murder today, and you said a shooting. Shooting is what we do at the range. There's 100 million of us. We're shooters. We go shooting. Never makes the news. And one murder in, how far away was it? Tennessee?
Tennessee.
Okay,
yeah.
so that's 2,400 miles away, and we're talking about it. That shouldn't be news here. The correct procedure is don't be involved in that.
Yeah.
I keep coming back
But
to
I mean,
that.
sometimes
if it happens,
you
okay,
can't.
Your blood pressure will be up, your pulse will be racing, your ears will be ringing because you fire one shot without earmuffs and your ears are ringing. You can barely hear. Your eyes are watery. You're not thinking straight. You won't be able to recall situational chronology at all. And then you described what you will say. You should say nothing.
Right. Give
Very
them a
hard to do.
card.
You're
'Cause
not
that's-
supposed to give them a card.
Oh, that's.
STFU. You know what that stands for?
I don't want to pronounce it. It sounds dirty.
Go ahead, try. STFU.
Be careful.
No.
Go ahead. You
This
can
is a
say-
family show,
You
Ray.
can bleep out the one word.
It's a family
Spoo?
show, Ray.
What?
STFU.
STFU.
Yeah.
Shut the... You get the idea.
Yeah.
It stands for speak the fewest utterances.
Right.
Okay. You're supposed to say, I need to speak to my lawyer. Well, what happened here? I need to speak to my lawyer.
Yeah.
And I think you can say, can I get some water, please?
Yeah. Or I'll
'Cause you
fully
probably need
cooperate, but I need to.
I wouldn't say I'll
No,
fully
no.
cooperate. No.
Yeah.
Are you
Just-
really
I
going to
need to
fully
speak.
cooperate?
I don't know.
I'm going to talk to my lawyer. I need to talk to my lawyer, please.
Yeah.
And you should have a lawyer. You shouldn't say, please get me a lawyer, because who are they going to get?
Oh no. Yeah.
You should have a lawyer, like you said. CCRKB, USCCA provides legal service. In town, we have Mark Victor. If you don't know Mark Victor and you're here in town, call him, get his card, have a meeting with him, ask him what he thinks you should do, and he'll tell you STFU.
Yeah.
Call me. Now, you said you should dial 911. In this book, there's a suggestion you should call Mark and have him call 911 so you don't inadvertently make statements.
Right.
And that's a mixed blessing. How come you lawyered up? I need to speak to my lawyer. And then sit mum. Not easy to do. There's a whole chapter on that. If he bleeds out because you didn't call 911 right away, you could have a problem. It's so complex and it's so ugly, you really don't want to be in that situation. And I don't want to sit here being a self-defense counselor. I would rather talk to you about some of the things that Biden has done that are harming us. And they're not really related to guns. You're sitting there looking fascinated. You are. I hope the people at home too. One of the worst things that Biden did was to ask his attorney general, what can I do without Congress? And what can I do that doesn't violate the Constitution? That is not what a president should be doing. So
No.
maybe he's not.
It's called executive overreach, and you know the thing
That's
is
a problem.
when he says all of this is constitutional. Number one, he's making a misstatement, but it says your right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Right.
Anything that you do to prohibit, to pull away from that, anything. If you limit rounds, you don't like a certain type of gun, you don't like a certain style of weapon, anything is infringement.
Yes and no. And I will disagree with some of what Diane Douglas said. I'll agree that no right is absolute. You can disarm a criminal when you put him in prison. You can take away his gun. Is that infringement? Or
Yeah,
is that an
but
exception?
he committed a crime
Well, there's a lot of crimes.
against the Constitution. So if you commit a crime against society, you lose some of your
You
Constitution.
forfeit some of your rights.
Right.
Right.
So you can disarm a person. A police officer can disarm you if he suspects you committed a crime and put you in the paddy wagon, take you down to jail, and sort it out.
Right.
So you, for the moment, lose your right to keep and bear arms if it seems like you're the guy who shot into that car I mentioned.
Even if somebody accused you of doing something and there's a restraining order against you, even though you did nothing.
That's a little bit more gray, and
Yeah.
we've had examples of that. But certainly, if you hold up a liquor store and get caught and shot and brought to the hospital, you can't keep your gun.
Right.
So there are some limits, and I would support them, and so would everybody, and so would George Washington.
Right.
Okay, so we're good there. Were you really the guy who held up the liquor store? Might be gray. It's a guy who looks like me on the videotape, which we never used to have. That's what the court is for. Now, he thinks he can simply restrict ammunition that's dangerous.
He meaning Biden.
Biden and his attorney general and the people who are actually calling the shots for him. Because I wrote an essay about who's really writing this stuff. Biden didn't write an 800-page bill to regulate voting.
No.
He didn't write H.R. 8 or H.R.
One.
1446. H.R. 8 and 1446 are the two gun bills that the House passed. He didn't write them. Who wrote them? And the media doesn't ask. I'm very upset about that.
Whoever sponsored that probably didn't write it either.
That's right. So who's writing our bills? These are the important questions and nobody's asking. The fact that one of these bills puts an $800 tax on owning a firearm, the important thing is you can't tax that. That's an infringement. And I've always said one of the biggest problems with our Constitution is that it provides no punishment for people who violate it. You take an oath to
That's
preserve.
true. Very true.
You take an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. Biden said, "My job is to protect the American people." That's false.
No,
Yeah.
it is. You're
That's false.
right.
And nobody called him on it. I'm calling him on it.
And additionally, one of the things that we've really lost over the years, these executive orders, the president is not to make law, he is to enforce law.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But they've gone past it. So the bill says you can't have 50 caliber ammunition. He has no authority to do that. Congress might have the authority, but I don't think they do. And that's not what they're doing. He's trying to do it, and he doesn't have that authority.
Right.
And so he should be punished, removed from office, censured, something. And the Constitution lacks a enforcement clause for anybody in Congress who acts outside their delegated authority. Now, the important part here, and I brought it with me, Arizona now is a gun sanctuary state. And I think
Tell us about that.
you bet. I think there's 9 of them. Montana has one. I helped Oklahoma write its bill, not quite as strong as I'd like to see. Here's what it says, and it's very short. An act, law, treaty, order, rule, or regulation of the United States government that violates Article 2, Section 26, our constitutional gun statute, gun regulation in the Constitution, or Amendment 2 of the Constitution of the United States is null, void, and unenforceable in this state. Now that's a great statement.
Can we say amen after that?
Say it.
Amen.
Let me get an amen from the audience.
Amen.
All right. Now that would be worthless as it's written, and I've said this many times. It has to say, if you do, you go to prison. And they added that. It says, this state and all political subdivisions of this state are prohibited from using any personnel or financial resources to enforce, administer, or cooperate with any act, law, treaty, order, rule, or regulation of the United States government that violates Article 2, Section 26, Constitution of Arizona, or Amendment 2 of the United States Constitution. So in other words, you can't enforce anything that violates our right to guns. And let me put it in plain English. The rights you have now to your firearms are the baseline. And anything that reduces that baseline is null and void. This is good.
It's very good.
This is really
Let me-
good.
let me
And
ask this
Ducey
question.
signed it.
Now, the ATF.
You can applaud. I love it.
The
Yes.
ATF.
Right?
Okay.
Or AFT, isn't it?
Oh,
Biden
right,
said
that's the
the
American
AFT.
Federation of Teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Biden got it
I'm
wrong,
talking about
you
the
know, he's a
alcohol,
senile
tobacco,
guy.
and
No, I
firearms
know,
people.
I know.
And they're the ones that are more than likely the ones that are going to say, you can't have that gun because the executive order says you can't have a 50 caliber, or you can't have this, or you can't
Right.
have that, or you've got 10 rounds and you're only allowed 7.
Right. Well, whatever it
Who
says.
was the one that would enforce that in this? Would it be sheriffs?
Well, there's no. All he did was make a speech and say, "I want to do this," and I do have that speech. Well, I have a.
Well, you know, the Ninth Circuit also did some foolish things just
It won't
2 weeks
matter.
ago.
Well, this will come out in the wash. It'll be very interesting to watch. Arizona now has sanctuary policy under the U.S. Constitution, which makes federal law supreme to the extent it's pursuant to the Constitution. So if they make anything that does not comport with the Constitution, it is not supreme.
What about income taxes?
I'm not a tax expert, and I'm not going to go there, but good luck, and you tell me when you find out.
Yeah, that's right.
If they made a law that said black people can't go into a restaurant, they could pass it, but it wouldn't matter because it doesn't comport with the Constitution.
Unconstitutional, right.
Now, a lot of things are unconstitutional. What Biden is committed to is defending our border. I will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. That's his oath. The Constitution requires him to defend the borders. He is not. There's nothing going on the border.
That's the
a
number one
lie.
point of the federal government: defend our borders.
And
Number one is defend, protect, and preserve the Constitution.
Right.
And in Article
Yeah.
1.
And this is
Section 8
my
has a
whole
lot of
point,
things.
that the President of the United States is a law enforcement officer. He
Right,
does not make the laws. That's what the House and the Senate do.
Right, and he executes them, and he's supposed to make sure Border Patrol, ICE, and the other agencies in charge of the border act. And if they don't, he should fire them and put new people in, like Reagan did with the air traffic controllers.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
so
he's making the case that, no, they're doing everything they should.
I'm going to bring something up that happened back in the 1920s. So the 17th Amendment.
I was not there, by the way,
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't think you
Okay.
were. Yeah.
just in case.
No, he's old enough.
Ron was.
No, you were there.
Ron was
you were
there.
there.
I
for
was
the-
there.
You were there for the Spanish-American
So
War.
the 17th Amendment took away
Teddy.
the senators from being selected by the state legislatures and then being elected. So in the original setup of the federal government, the Senate, those 2 senators from each state, were there specifically to protect the state's
The
rights
state's interests,
and
right.
the state's sovereignty. So a lot of these things that are coming out, the Senate would have immediately, I mean, Arizona, if they chose 2 people to go represent them, would say, hey, you 2 senators, you tell the president he can't do this because it's affecting our state. And then anything that the legislature would try to do would be circumvented by the Senate because they would have to agree to it.
Right.
But now we're in a position where they're all in the same pot. Everybody's elected, and their number one goal.
That's why the
once they get
17th
elected-
Amendment was just a terrible
It was not
amendment.
Oh, it should
And
be repealed.
it was the first step, in my opinion, the very first step in destroying representative Republican government.
But I don't think most people even know what the 17th Amendment is, why it was so important. But this is specifically.
Okay, well let's explain that real quick.
Well, I just kind of explained it where the Senate was no longer selected. The
the
state
states.
state representatives. yeah.
Originally in the
Right.
original Constitution before
So
amendments.
what would happen was the state Senate, the state House, the state legislature would handpick 2 people to go represent their state in the Senate, in the upper house.
And these people were responsible to the state legislature.
Right.
Yes.
And if by chance
And we're
they
not elected by the people.
They were not elected by the people. So if by chance they were doing something that the state legislature didn't like, they would say, you're out, we're putting somebody else in. They had complete control over that to protect the sovereignty and the rights of each individual states. Remember, we are the United States of
And
America,
each
not the
state,
United Federal
We have
Government.
50 unique state governments.
Right.
Federalism.
Yeah. So so what happened with the 17th Amendment is they were no longer selected by the state legislature. They were elected by the people. So now Congress and the Senate are both elected. Their main goal is to be reelected. Remember, we don't have term limits at this point. And so they just
Not
want
in
to
the
be
federal,
reelected.
we still
and,
don't.
And nobody is protecting states' rights. So the federal government gets bigger and bigger and bigger, usurps the power that the states should have, because the Constitution specifically says anything that is not given specifically to the federal government goes
10th Amendment.
Is
to the
held to the states,
to
or
the states or the people respectively. So because of that, we are now in the situation that we're in, and every single thing that the executive branch or the judicial branch or the legislative branch wants to do, there's no recourse from a state level.
Yes.
I would argue, yeah, the problem's bigger than that, in my opinion. You could trace it back to the first gun law, which was in 1898, and it shouldn't have been there, and yet it
What
passed.
was that gun law?
It's a law about hunting in the national parks. And they could have banned hunting without banning possession of hunting guns in the national parks, which was infringement, in my opinion. But that's a minor point. I'll use a metaphor here, or a parable. The heart and the stomach are having an argument. And the heart says, I'm the most important because I pump the blood. And the stomach says, no, I'm the most important because I digest the food. And they're arguing, and the asshole shuts up and they all die. And I know I can use that word.
Thank you for that analogy there.
I know I can use that word because the jawbone of an ass is in the Bible, so it's okay. It's kosher to mix metaphors. But the point is, you can't make a hierarchy out of different important things. You need your kidneys. You need your gallbladder. To say that it's this amendment or this piece of things, Jefferson said, and I think this came up with Diane Douglas, Jefferson said that if the government isn't run by people who are moral, the system won't work.
Right.
So we have people who aren't moral, and they're willing to cut corners and do things they're not allowed to do, and at this point, it's all completely out of control.
Yeah.
Biden says, I've got to protect the people. No, you don't.
No.
You've got to protect our rights, and we'll take care of things.
Well
right.
said.
And there's so many other things going on that aren't right.
And Alan, you said something here, and I know this. Those of us that have really studied this understand what federalism is.
Most
but
people
it's
don't.
not what you think it is. It is not supportive of federal government. It is against
That's
federal
true.
government.
It's a bad name. It's statism, and that's a wrong word because that's something else. And you said people don't know what the 17th Amendment is. They don't know what the Bill of Rights is.
No.
They don't know what freedom of speech is. Students today don't. I wrote a whole book called "Bomb Jokes at Airports." People don't know which is jokes.
Yeah.
You go through all the security and the metal checker
Well,
and
well,
a butt probe,
I-
and you can't tell a joke.
I still don't understand hate speech.
Hate speech is a concoction of the left.
Because if it's either free speech or it's
Or it's
not free speech.
And the idea that you hit a guy over the head with a 2x4 and it's a bigger crime because you didn't like him because his eyes squint or his color's dark or whatever.
Right.
It's not.
A
It's
crime is a
harm
crime.
done.
Yeah.
It's harm done.
Yeah.
The left is doing everything they can to dissemble America. We have a lot of enemies. I used to do a talk on what enemies does America have? And the audience, through so many names and enemies we have, the thing they were looking for before was the list of communist goals from the 1960s. It's in the Federal Register, and their goal was to defeat America with dozens of cuts. There were 45 separate goals: destroy the family, put communists in place in the media, in the teaching
Control the
unions,
schools.
in the schools,
Yeah.
all over the place, and they've succeeded. And Khrushchev said, you'll raise the communist flag yourselves, we won't have to do it, and it's happening.
Yeah.
And they're tearing us apart. And we have to go back to fundamental principles. We have guns, but who do you shoot, right? And with the refrigerator's full of cold beer and the TV's on. So nobody wants to get rid of their comfort level. And little by little, death by 1,000 cuts are taking us apart. People like us understand it, but we're older guys. And the youngsters don't understand it. I have a cousin who lives nephew who lives nearby. He doesn't get this stuff at all.
Yeah.
And I could discuss it with him all day. He won't get it. One of the Jewish guys I was talking to, Yeah, but if they would just take away the guns. And I tried to explain to him that they have guns.
Right.
You're talking about people with guns taking away guns. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah.
That was
Do
Germany.
they not know history? I mean, all they have
He
to
knows
do
Well,
is
you go to
history.
Germany,
Yeah.
the Soviet Union. You can go to the Middle
They
East,
don't take away the guns
Southeast
nicely.
Asia. The same
know-
scenario.
it's-
Take them by force. He didn't get it. They,
They use-
should just, who's they?
they use trigger words. Trigger words.
Meaning the left?
They meaning the left.
Trigger
left,
words,
Yeah.
yes,
So so I walked into a Home Depot, and I went up to the guy and I said, I need the hardware department. He points over there, and I called the guy over and I said, I need to buy an assault hammer. And he said, well,
A lot of people
what do
were
you,
killed with
what do you
hammers,
mean?
of course.
Yeah, I think more people than handguns. They
No,
did- or
not more, but plenty.
Plenty. So I said, well, which one of these
And
can
I think you mean
is-
murdered. I know
yeah.
a guy who survived the Holocaust, very adamant about this. He's in that group, JPFO. Nobody was killed in the Holocaust. And everybody looks at him. He says,
Right.
they was murdered.
Right? And it's true. It's
Yeah,
true.
that's true.
But you know what? Anything can be used to
Words are
assault
important here. Aren't
anybody, right? So when our president
Yeah, they use
says
assault.
these assault weapons, no, their intent is not to assault somebody.
Right.
The person does the assaulting,
Protecting
not the weapon.
weapons.
So you could have anything. You could have a can
But
of
they
beans.
do that to us all the time. They
Yeah.
kill us with words. Assault is a kind of behavior,
Right.
and it's a crime.
Right.
Assault is a crime. You can look it up. It's class 3 felony. A weapon is a weapon, but they do that to us all the time.
Yeah.
And we fall into it. And the media doesn't care, uses it without any thinking. I write a column as the uninvited ombudsman trying to fight with them over this. They don't listen, they don't care. They want America to collapse. They're doing a good job of it, and we fight, but it's an uphill battle.
But you have to meet a lot of patriots that are out there. They understand the situation. They are ready, willing, and able to continue the good, and I'll say fight, the good fight, which is preserve and protect the Constitution of the United
That's true,
States.
but they control the media, the schools, the newspapers, which is part of the media. They're effective at modifying, controlling the narrative. I keep trying to come up with words that work on our side. Constitutional carry was invented here in Arizona. Household firearms, regular capacity magazines. These are terms we have come up with and we're pushing into the national dialogue because they're talking about high capacity magazines. No, normal capacity magazines.
Yeah, what is high capacity? What does that mean?
That's a scary sounding word that the leftists who want to outlaw firearms use to scare people who don't understand. It's a normal capacity magazine. I'll agree to it when the police will agree to it. Will the police agree to have 7-round magazines? No. Why not? Because it's dangerous.
That's right.
When you don't have enough ammunition, you're at risk. Will you do it? No, of course not. Will the police give up their guns? No, of course not. Why not? That's dangerous. Doesn't make it into the national dialogue.
Right.
They control that. And they're raising the kids to believe nonsense, and this is what we fight. You look at what this guy said, it's insane. He talks about
Give us a little bit of it.
well, he talks about how many people have died because people own firearms, but he doesn't talk about how many lives have been saved.
Have been saved.
2.5 million times a year, firearms save lives. And most of the time, the gun isn't fired.
All right, so say that one more time, just for our audience. So anybody's listening maybe for the first time, and we speak the truth here. We want to give you the information. You make your own decisions. We're always here. We have people from both sides of the aisle. Come on. Tell them the facts again.
2.5 million times a year, guns save lives. Most of the time, the gun isn't even fired. But the media tells you about somebody who was murdered 2,000 miles away for weeks, and that's supposed to carry the conversation. He says here, he talked about hundreds of thousands of people have been denied guns through the background check. Well, what happened to them? Were they arrested? No, of course not. Why not? Because they didn't do anything bad enough to qualify dispatching a police team. Why not? Because we can't bring them to court. They didn't do anything significant enough to get an arrest or to get a conviction. Millions of people were denied their right through the background check, and they didn't do anything that qualifies as a sufficient crime. So we're denying people their civil rights by a clerk in front of a computer screen in West Virginia, and this is good, and
So
they keep
what
pushing
would,
it.
what would be a reason for them to be denied on a background check?
Almost all of them are illegal aliens.
Wow.
That's almost all. The statistics are up online. You can just look up background check, reasons for denial. The FBI posts the figures. Almost all of them, 80, 90% is illegal alien. They go into a store, want to buy a gun, they show some kind of ID. I'm sorry, sir, you're an illegal alien, you're not in the country legally, I can't sell you the gun. The guy takes his money and walks out of the store and then goes looking for a gun.
Yeah.
And maybe buys it out of a trunk, or he can't get the gun. This is good.
We're almost short of time, but I want to talk to you just a moment. You were talking about guns save lives.
Right.
And you have, for years, at a lot of events, you have had little
I had
stickers.
buttons and stickers.
And
right.
you also were very instrumental in getting that message on bus stops.
Oh,
Tell
yeah.
us a little bit about that.
Well,
that was pure genius.
We had a campaign. When we went to constitutional carry in Arizona, instead of 2% of the public carrying a firearm, half the public could carry a firearm without having to beg for permission slips. So I figured, let's get everybody trained. And we came up with the Train Me Arizona campaign, and we put up bus stops and billboards all over the place with a big red heart that said, "Guns Save Lives, Arizona supports gun safety." And we got many of the major manufacturers to chip in money. We raised like $100 grand and put up signs all over the place, "Guns Save Lives," to get the message out. Eventually, the city of Phoenix sued, took the signs down. We sued them with the Goldwater Institute and the ACLU.
Wow.
Because it was denial of free
What
speech.
a group of people that was, getting them together.
Just
Took almost 4 years, but we won.
Just so the people of Arizona know, here in the state of Arizona, you do not have to have a concealed carry permit. You
Correct.
can automatically conceal carry for everyone.
This we don't like the phrase concealed carry. Sounds like you're
Okay,
hiding
we're
something.
we're,
We
we're
like
just
discreet
we got to
carry.
wrap this up
Discreet
real
carry,
quick.
okay.
You can't
Yeah.
hear it because you don't have your headset, but the music is playing.
Well,
And
thanks so much
Alan
for coming
Korwin, we
on.
appreciate you being here.
Gunlaws.com.
Yeah, give us a
And
website a couple
can
times.
we have you back? This has been very, very, very
No, I ain't
educational.
coming back here again.
Okay.
You guys are radical right-wing
Okay.
lunatics.
Just leave your books.
I'd be delighted to come back. If you're new to guns, get this one.
That's your first gun.
And thank you all for watching. We'll see you Wednesday night on Fighting Back. Mr. DeSanti, thank you for driving this ship. And we'll see you on Wednesday. Thanks for watching Hub Radio.